Good morning, Fort Alliance. It is wonderful to be with you guys. It's great to have our friends and neighbors from SPAC join us as well. You know, on the heels of Pastor Ron being here last week and speaking to us a little bit about the significance of unity in the body, this is a great picture, actually. And initially, I won't lie, there was a little bit of me that felt guilty when I started talking with Pastor Amber because I was poaching. And kind of like stealing some of the best from another church to it's really good here too, I swear. Right on cue, we practice that, I swear. And so as her and I are going through the interview process and talking, and I was dealing with my own just side emotions, but really I was more so just trying to be the best leader I could be here, if I'm being honest. There was this kind of cool moment that happened that just blessed my heart, and it was totally a God thing, in that she started sharing with me about this younger piano player at her church who's been on the worship team for a while and was a pharmacist and what have you. And, he was, newlywed, and now his wife might be getting involved and what have you. And so as she's talking, I pulled out my phone and got my Facebook open, and I was like, is it them? And she was like, yes, how do you know them? And I was like, well, my wife mentored Taryn all through high school. And I'm like, we're even, SPAC. Ha! But in all seriousness, it was cool, because your dad was one of my best friends in Lloydminster. I came to watch you play fastball and all that kind of stuff growing up. And so to see her at SPAC now was a blessing as she kind of comes into the worship team there. And so it's really a God-ordained picture of the church, without us even knowing, building each other up and helping and serving and what have you, which is really cool. Now, speaking of the church being united, on Friday I had a prayer meeting here with 4 other churches. There has never been so much praying in tongues in Fort Alliance, I'm sure, in its history. It was awesome. One of the churches was Place of Rest. It's a church that was kind of established and kind of sent out from Nigeria. And you could actually pray for me because I'm speaking at their church this Friday at a prayer meeting that goes from 9 till 1 in the morning. We got some things to learn, y'all. It's a powerhouse gathering. When Pastor Johnson was praying, man, my spirit knew something was going on, and it was so cool. So I'm speaking at their church. You could pray for me in that. But speaking of prayer meetings, we've had a couple ladies that have been really convicted about getting us on a more regular rhythm and routine and just our weekly times of prayer. And so we just wanted you to know, on Tuesday at 4, we're just going to begin with a remnant of our people gathering for a time of prayer at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. And so you're welcome to join this little remnant of ladies that wants to get us praying more consistently and regularly. So we wanted to make sure you knew about that. That Tuesday at 4, that was happening. Now, as I get going here, I got a question to start us off with. And it is this: what did you want to be when you grew up? Are you doing what you wanted to be doing when you grew up? A couple heads are shaking no. I see some yeah, I'm right where I wanted to be, which is great. While you think about that, let me just pause and welcome those of you who are online. We're so glad that you are with us. If you're maybe not feeling well or just away, and this is a means for you to keep up, great to have you. If you're checking out Fort Alliance, welcome. We're glad to have you. If you're from Fort Saskatchewan and trying to find a church family or church home, we just want you to know that the people of God, the gathering of God's people, the church, are better together, and we'd love to meet up with you. If Sunday morning is a little intimidating initially, we'd be happy to meet up during the week, one-on-one in a smaller setting, whatever works, because we'd love to get to know you and help you connect with the church here in Fort Saskatchewan. So, back to the question at hand. What did you want to be when you grew up? Little Kenny Fisher. He wanted to be a dolphin trainer. There was a period of my life where I swore I was going to be a dolphin trainer. Could you imagine me today in a, onesie type neoprene suit in the pool? I sink like a rock when I swim, everybody. That is the one sport I cannot beat my wife in, by the way. She glides, I sink. That was me as a little guy. But in all honesty, as I got into my late teens and my young adulthood, early 20s, I genuinely wanted to do or be a part of something in my life and my career where I was connected to God's kingdom work some way and somehow. The only stipulation I had was never a pastor in a church in Canada. And here I am. What's really cool, though, in the midst of those kind of years, those formational, like late teenage, early 20 years, is God was like working in my heart, moving in my heart in such a way that he was wanting to establish this desire to come in alignment with like the heart of Jesus and to reach the world. That was something that was deeply important to me. I wanted to be a part of a kingdom movement, a reach the world type mentality. And even though I had some issues with pastoring in local churches in Canada, those two in the end, in more ways than I could even describe as of today, have fully collided. And it's going to come out today as we talk about the topic at hand, which is reach the world. At the very beginning of the fall, we did a little message on the first part of our vision statement, which is to serve the fort. And so we talk about at Fort Alliance that we have this mission statement. It is to love God and to love others. This is our why. The why we exist is a gathering of God's colons. We want to love God and love others. And then we have this vision statement, which is to serve the fort and to reach the world. This is our how. We want to serve the fort and reach the world. And today we want to just take a little bit of a time, a moment, if you will, to just think about what does that mean to reach the world. What's really cool about this thought or this idea of reaching the world is it perfectly comes today on the forefront or the precipice of the Advent season. Because Advent, we celebrate Emmanuel, God with us, don't we? And the reality, the truth is that Jesus, God, took on flesh and dwelt among us, moved into the neighborhood, if you will. If you want to talk about the ultimate reach the world example, it's Jesus, without a doubt. And so here we are about to celebrate Advent, the coming of God, right? God with us. And here we are today considering that very thought of what it means to reach the world. Jesus, upon his death, his burial, his resurrection, gave some really significant and powerful words on this. He said that all authority is given to me. Therefore, go into all the nations, into all the world, and make disciples. Teach them to obey everything I've commanded. Baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This is what Jesus has asked us and commanded us to step into day by day, kind of as we walk and journey along with him. He tells us that we're to be a people who reach the world. So here I am today with this now a call to be a pastor here in Canada, and it's really fully collided with this thought of reaching the world, and this has changed in more ways than I would have ever thought over the years. I've told you just a couple weeks ago how I wrestled with the thought or the idea of feeling like I would be a much better Viking pastor, and that I was perhaps born in the wrong era. And I realize I'm not born in the wrong era, that God doesn't make mistakes. He's got me right where he wants me, the same way he's got you right where he wants you. And so I've come to see that, one of the ways I'm wired is to think and to consider how one might strategically be about reaching the world. How might, one specifically plan, if you will, to reach the world. And so one person that I enjoy following as a resource is a gentleman by the name of Carey Nieuwhof. Now, you need to know, I don't agree with everything that Carey Nieuwhof puts out there, but he has done an immense amount of research and study and provides great resources for the church in Canada. And he recently just put out a article called 5 Church Attendance Stats that every church leader needs to understand for 2024. And so this was really fascinating for me, and one of its points actually perfectly segues into some of the things I want to talk about today. So in the list of these 5 things, the first thing he mentioned was that the average age of the senior pastor today in Canada is 60. Bringing that down. But this is important for us nonetheless to realize because there is an aging population of pastors. And so how are we preparing? How are we training young leaders to kind of follow up the legacy, the good legacies that have been set before us? So that's important. The next one that he brought out, which is really important for some of the things I want to bring out, is that boomers are dropping out and millennials are stepping up on all fronts. And so I think I got a little graph. The orange, if you can see it, is the boomers. It's not so much a dropping out as perhaps an aging out. Because that's just the reality of life, if we're being honest, isn't it? But what's really, really cool about this, and is really important to us as we kind of set the table for our topic at hand, reaching the world, is the incredible spike in millennials that are becoming more and more involved and interested in Jesus' church. Now, a little side note I want to say, and I'm going to say this to the second service too, guys, just so you know, okay? Our boomers are the most amazing boomers in all of Canada. And I mean it. And this is a compliment, I swear. I know sometimes our generations will clash and say silly things about each other, and that's not what I want to do right now. But I say and brag about our boomers when I talk with my friends, my colleagues, my peers in ministry, say, I have the most millennial baby boomers in the country. I mean it. Yeah, that's right. You all take super seriously the call to, seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. You guys are at the forefront in Fort Saskatchewan of helping those who are in need. You're the ones who, keep the food bank running, who are in all hours of the night. And I could tell stories, I'm not going to tell because I want to embarrass people, ensuring people are cared for, looked out, just as is sought. You are amazing in this fellowship, and I am super proud of the baby boomers in Fort Alliance. So I just wanted to add that. But the point for where we're going to get is we need to recognize in Canada there is this spike in the millennials' involvement, and that needs to be a point and of interest to us. We need to recognize this and start to think about how do we kind of leverage or utilize that reality to be the church on mission for Jesus to reach the world, if you will. Then he adds a couple others that I'm just going to speak so you get the taste article. He spoke of how 27% of churchgoers now rely on church online, whether it's sick, not well, traveling, shut in, what have you. The stable church is disappearing. COVID has changed a ton of things, and there are a ton of differences within the church today, and that's what he's speaking to in that. And then online church is boosting church attendance, which I'm just going to hit pause real quick. I'm going to just one more time invite those of you who are online to come gather, because this is one of the points I kind of disagree with Carey on. You can't gather with the church online. So I want you guys to know that. It's an important thing. It's really, really important. Okay, it's the new front door. When we're sick and when we're not well, it's a great way to keep up. When we're looking for a new church, when we're trying to find where to connect, it's so, so, so important. And we're going to continue to make sure that that's available. But I just want you to know, I am convinced that the church is literally the gathering of God's called out ones. That's what it is by definition in its original Greek language. And so we have to gather. We need to be together. We need to encourage one another. We need to challenge one another to press on. But that's a side note and a completely different sermon, but I just had to add my 2 cents because I'm up here and have the microphone. Anyways, I wanted to point this article out just as a means to show you the significance of millennials in the Church of Canada, the significance of millennials in our church family as well. And their thoughts on reaching the world really matter, and they have some thoughts that ought to shape us. And so I want some information I want to share with you that comes from the Barna Research Group, okay? And so I want to go back to 2019, then I'm going to move forward to 2023. So in 2019, the Barna Group interviewed Christians regarding their thoughts on evangelism, aka reaching the world, okay? 94% of millennials, so that's the biggest spike in church involvement, okay? 94% of millennials agreed that the best thing that could ever happen to someone is for them to know Jesus. Now, I think that should be 100%, but that's a side note and a completely different term as well. But really high is the point, right? 94% of millennials felt like the best thing that could ever happen for someone is for them to know Jesus. However, almost half of those, 47% of them in fact, agreed, at least somewhat, that it is wrong to share one's personal beliefs with someone of a different faith in hopes that they will one day share the same faith. Interesting. Okay? Why? Why? Now, this is my thoughts. Sift this, kind of see what you think in regards to it, and we can chat later. Many, and I don't think this is just millennials if I'm being honest, they feel uncomfortable with the reaching of the world, specifically, other cultures and other places, because if we're being honest, some really awful things have happened in Christian culture or under the banner of Jesus, even though it wasn't, when it comes to the spreading of his message. Now, I'm going to hit pause before I go on with that thought. It's also important to point out some really cool things have happened over the years because of church. We have hospitals today because of the Christian church. We have orphanages today because of the Christian church. Like, this is where these things started and were formed and how they happened. But if we are being honest, there's been some really horrible things in history, haven't there, that have happened to people in the name of God or Jesus or the gospel. And Canada, as we all know, is no exception to that. And so I just want to be really clear as we kind of talk about reaching the world to begin. And I want to be clear in this. Expanding borders and territories and mixing it with religious efforts and messages is not anywhere close to the heart of God. It's not anywhere close to Jesus' heart and the heart he has behind the Great Commission in Matthew 28. And the tragedies that we're all so very, very aware of, they are not reflective of God's heart and God's desire for his message to come and impact the world. So just to be clear, reaching the world does not look like, colonialism or cultural genocide that has happened both nationally in Canada and also all around the world. Jesus did not say, go into all the world and westernize it. He didn't say, go into all the world and implement our specific version of Christian culture. He didn't say, go into all the world and steal wealth while you tell people about Jesus. He didn't say, go into all the world and act like our cultural practices are better than someone else's. He said, go into all the world and make disciples. Meaning communicate to them who I am, how I can change a life. And the reality is once someone knows Jesus, once they get to recognize his heart, once they begin to walk with him, their own Christian culture is going to be formed and morphed out of that. Now just imagine for just a moment, here's my Gen X, because I've talked a lot about boomers and a lot about millennials, so let's do Gen X for a bit. Just imagine if, the Apostle Peter could show up in the DeLorean and Michael J. Fox and him walked in. How crazy do you think it would look to Peter, the church of 2023 in Fort Saskatchewan? He'd walk in his dress, right? With his immensely dirty, cracked, callous, probably somewhat stinky feet. And then we'd go and serve him communion out of our little sanitized, sterilized, perfectly formed communion packages where the wafer tastes like cardboard. Like, could you imagine what he'd be thinking? Like, this is church 2023. We got AC most of the time in summer. We got heating in the winter. Like, it would be so different than what he would have ever imagined. But what would be the same for Peter as it is for us is the heart to know Jesus, to walk with him, to recognize that Jesus, God became flesh. God became a human being, dwelt among us. He walked among us. He demonstrated what it means to know God, to be in relationship with him, and then ultimately would take on the sin of the world, your sin, my sin, and pay for it on that cross that we could be forgiven and freed and then brought into relationship with God again. We would be able to have this recognition that we can come to Jesus now and say, Jesus, I'm sorry. Jesus, will you forgive me? Jesus, here in my life, it's yours. That's what we would have in common. The cultural pieces would have looked very, very different. And so this idea of coming to Jesus and saying, Jesus, my life, it's yours. It moves us to this mindset where we begin to ask ourselves this question that was deeply concerning to his heart. And that is the question of, well, how do I then reach the world? What does it look like to live like Jesus, to love like Jesus? Maybe I should put that in present tense because he's the living God. What does it look like to love the way Jesus loves today, to live as Jesus lives today? Well, without a doubt, it comes with a recognition that all people are created in the image of God and thus have an immense value and worth before God. It comes with great compassion. It comes with a heart to protect dignity of all people, with humility, a willingness to just lay down our own self-centered ideas and decenter it to the values of and opinions of others. It comes above all with a great and an immense love that reflects his love. So what does it look like in a concrete way to reach the world in 2023? Well, sometimes, and historically for many of us, there was this concept or idea of the person who would, sell everything and move away, the missionary. Now, before I go on, this is super important and still valuable today. In the Alliance, we have what we call IWs. And IWs are all around the world within the Alliance as a means to help reach the world. So often now today, they go as IT people, nurses, teacher, businessmen and women. And the work they do is incredible. And I don't want to belittle that for any amount of time. In fact, what's really, really cool is on January 28th, footnote this in your mind, we have a couple coming that we're going to begin a relationship with that I feel you are going to love to get behind. They're doing some of the most amazing work in one of the darkest places in the world, and they are proactively working in such a way that they're training young girls so they don't have to enter into the sex trade in the part of the world where that is just the regular and the norm. We're going to get to meet them on the 28th. We're going to learn how we can perhaps partner with them in the future. It's going to be an incredible time. This matters, okay? That happens. But the truth is, for most of us, probably all of us, because we're here, there's a different call in our life, isn't there? For me, it was the call to pastor a church in Canada. The one thing I said I would never do. And now these worlds of reaching the world, these ideas, these concepts of reaching the world and pastoring Canada are colliding. And for you, as for the most part, Canadians, right? People who live here, who are part of life here, there's a call still on you to reach the world. And what we need to recognize is that there is a massive shift in the world happening right now. A huge shift that's taking place under our watch, under our time, for such a time as this. And never has it been more important nor easier to reach the world than by simply existing and doing life in Canada. Check this out. In 2021, the Canadian census revealed that there are more than 450 ethnic and cultural groups of origin in Canada now. 450. The world is like our next door neighbor, literally now. There's over 100 different religions represented in Canada. 450 languages were included. As of July 1st, 2023, in fact, there's an estimated 2 million non-permanent residents who live in Canada. And 46%, this is a 46% increase from the year before. The world is at our doorsteps. Literally, we can reach the world in ways we've never been able to before by simply following Jesus, walking with him right here in Canada. Also, there is approximately 12.6 million people in Canada, that's a third of the population of Canada, who are reported on the latest census to have no religious affiliation. A third of Canada just say they have no religious affiliation, nothing to do with God. The unreached people are literally right next door. Like, what an opportunity to reach the world in 2023 today. We don't need the Viking pastors or the Viking church, right? We need the people of God recognizing that right here, right now, we have the opportunity to reach the world with the message and the love of Jesus right here and right now. So what do? How do we do this? Well, the Bible has some incredible instructions, and specifically, I'm going to give you a couple Old Testament ones because this is not a New Testament idea. This is at the very heart and the core of who God is. This is Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 19. The scriptures tell us to, so show your love for the alien, or the foreigner would be another word. For you were once aliens or foreigners in the land of Egypt. Leviticus chapter 19, verse 34. The stranger who resides with you shall be to you as the native among you. You shall love him as yourself. For you were aliens in the land of Egypt, and I am the Lord your God. There are over 70 verses in the Bible that speak of caring for the refugee, the alien, the sojourner, and the stranger. This is at the heart of who God is to reach the world. Jesus, in fact, goes on and gives us some really, really practical advice. Matthew 25, in the midst of this parable that I'm sure you will recognize of the sheep and the goat. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me in. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me. The heart of Jesus is to reach those who are not reached, and to do so in practical ways and means that are just tangible and real in the midst of our everyday life. And since the world is closer than it has ever been, we have the opportunity to reach the world right here, right now, in our everyday life. So how? Like, give me the practical, Pastor Ken, give me the practical, like, how do I do that? I got 3 things as I wrap up. The first one, serve or love. And I talked about it already. You baby boomers, you are amazing. You are an example to our entire fellowship, me included, of what it looks like to serve and to love and just practically care for the needs of others. Thank you for that example to us. Serve, love. Second thing, and then these next 2 go together, and I'm stealing them from an unknown person because I read this years ago and I can't remember who it is, and nor can I find it. But one of the leading evangelists of our day has said it like this: the very first thing, the most important thing we need to understand when it comes to reaching our neighbor, which is now how we reach the world, is to listen. Listen. understand. As you enter into conversation with people who don't know Jesus, who are different than you, listen, ask questions, seek to understand. The person I'm referring to, in fact, said 90% of your conversation should be listening and understanding. Listen, understand. This means if you're having a 10-minute conversation with someone, and I'm just using this for simple numbers, like 9 minutes of that should be you listening and understanding their story, who they are, where they're from, what makes them unique. Listen and understand. And then the third thing, the last 10%, ask. This is my go-to, and I use it all the time. Ask someone if you can share how Jesus has helped you with the topic at hand. Ask someone if you can share with how Jesus has shaped your understanding of the topic at hand. If they come out and they say no, it's okay. I don't want to hear. Go back to number one. Serve, love, and listen. But if they say, yeah, I'd like to hear about how Jesus has shaped your understanding or how Jesus helped you, now the door is open. In your 1 minute of that 10-minute conversation, share how Jesus has shaped or helped you in the midst of the conversation at hand. Just your story. That's all you need. Your story. Serve, love. Listen and understand. And then ask, can I share how Jesus has helped me? Now, this requires an incredible amount of boldness. And I admit to you, I'm a chicken. And you want to know what helps me? Is the Apostle Paul, who many of you are very familiar with, was kind of a chicken too. He, in fact, asked that the church would pray for boldness for him. Of all the people who needed boldness, really, he asked that the church would pray for him to be bold, that he would have courage when it comes to share. Now, if the Apostle Paul needed prayer for courage, it's okay. I guess I need prayer too, right? And so today, as we consider reaching the world, as we consider that the world is now our neighbor, I simply want to pray for you that you would be bold in your 10% of the conversation and have the courage to ask, can I share with you how Jesus da 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 da? If you'd like me to pray for you, just bow your heads, open your hands. Holy Papa, our Father in heaven, thank you that you loved us so much that you sent Jesus. Jesus, thank you for coming, for demonstrating what it means to know God, to walk with God, and that to ultimately take my sin and our sin, that we could now, like you, know God and walk with God. We confess to you that we are a people in need of courage. As the world literally comes and moves into the neighborhood with us, would you give us courage and boldness to ask Jesus, would you give us boldness and courage to ask, can I share with you how Jesus helped me? Holy Spirit, we know you are the living God and you're active. Would you come upon your people? Would you rest on them right now? Would you encourage them? Would you fill them fresh, that they might leave this place people on mission for you, ready to reach the world? In your name we pray.